Hi, I'm Anita. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a necklace, and this is going to be a technique called the Russian spiral, and I'm going to be using Miyuki 11.0 hex beads and Miyuki 11.0 seed beads. Now you can apply this technique to any beads in your stash. If you don't have a hex bead, you can use 4mm rounds or 6mm rounds. The bigger diameter, the bigger the diameter that your necklace will be. I'll have links in the description box below that'll apply to the products used in today's tutorial. If you click more below the video, you'll get all the details, including a link to my website. Alright, let's get started. First of all, I'll show you the materials you're going to need. I'm using 6-pound fireline and crystal today. You're going to need a pair of scissors, and I'm using size 10 beading needle. Now, like I said, you can do this Russian spiral technique using any beads in your stash. If you wanted to make a really tight spiral, and I'll show you what we're doing today, here is a quick glimpse of the pattern using the same color of hex bead. And the diameter on this is about, 3/4, actually 3/8 of an inch, not quite a quarter, not quite a half inch. And so the smaller the bead, if you wanted to try to make one of these using, say, 11/0s and 15/0s, it would be a tighter spiral, and so it would be not quite as thick. So you can use this multicolored. If you wanted to use 3 different colors, you'd have a triple color of spiral. I decided to do this all in one color, and that's what we're going to be working on today. All right, so here are the materials you're going to need, and this particular hex bead that I have here, the color's called denim. It's kind of got a rainbow effect to it, very pretty blue. And I've got 11/0 seed beads in the galvanized silver. I've got 2 wire guardians, 2 4mm jump rings, open jump rings, and then a 6mm jump ring and a lobster clasp. So that's what you're going to need today. And let me clear my area and we'll get started. Okay, you're going to start by stringing about, you can start with a yard. You don't want to get too long a thread. You are going to have to be adding thread to this project. So it's very simple to do. You just, back weave a few beads and bring your thread through, tie a couple of knots, and then continue where you left off. Now the thing about adding thread, you always want to add thread where you left off so you don't lose track of your pattern, and that way you have a continuous flow of the spiral so it doesn't look interrupted. Now we're going to start by picking up a hex bead, 2 11/0s, and you're going to do that 3 times. So I've got a hex bead, 2 11/0s, a hex bead, 2 11/0s, a hex bead, and 2 11/0s. And I'm going to bring that down, and I'm going to leave a small tail 6 to 8 inches just to weave that in. And I'm going to bring my needle back through the hex bead where I started, and then through the next 11/0. So I'm going to leave a tail long enough to weave the thread in. And I'm going to leave it only one pass because I'm going to be going through this to reinforce the tail once I have a little bit of a length to hold on to. And then we'll get rid of that thread. So I don't want to do any knots because I'm going to be passing through these beads a few times. So right now I'm exiting this 11/0 right here. So now I'm going to pick up, and you're doing this in groups of 3. So if you had 3 different colors, you could do that as well, but I'm doing them all in the same color. So each time you start a new row, I would suggest putting your group of 3 beads so you know where your row ends. So pick up your hex bead, 2 11/0s. We're exiting this 11/0 here. We're going to skip the next 11-0 hex bead, and go through the 11-0 right after the next hex bead in line. And just hold that between your fingers and pull your thread through. And that should sit on top. Let's get that. It's kind of loose because we didn't go through this more than once. So I'm just going to pull this together like that. It's going to just sit on top. We're going to do this again. Pick up a hex bead, 2 11-0s. So I'm exiting here. I'm skipping the hex bead, going through the 11-0 right after it. Just pull that together. Want that to kind of go on top. Pull your tail thread if it gets loose. We're going to pick up another hex bead and 2 11-0s. I'm exiting this 11-0, skipping the hex bead, going into the 11-0 right after. That completes the row. Now we're also going to step up. So we're going to continue through the hex bead coming up and the 11-0. You can do that in one step to step up. So we're going to put our needle through, pull this together, and you want that to kind of sit on top. And so that was the second row. Now you can't really tell the spiral yet because we just started. Now if you have trouble holding on to this because the first few rows are a little awkward, you can use something to kind of hold your work, like a crochet needle. I've got a little bead reamer here. I can just use that to guide my way as I get my rows until I can hold on to it. So you can do that. So right now we're exiting this 11-0 right here. So I'm going to pick up, get my next group of 3 hex beads, and I'm going to have 6 11-0s. So I'm going to pick up a hex bead, 2 11-0s. I'm exiting this 11-0 right here, skipping the hex bead that's next in line. I'm going to go through the next 11-0. I'm going to take this off so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm skipping right here. I'm skipping this hex bead going in through the next 11-0. Pull that together. That should sit on top. I'm going to pick up a hex bead, 2 11-0s. I'm exiting right here, skipping this hex bead, and going into the next 11-0. Right there. Let's pull that together. It should sit on top. Now we're going to do that again. Pick up a hex bead, 2 11-0s. I'm exiting right here. There's my next hex bead. I'm going to go through the next 11-0. Now this is the end of the row because that's my third hex bead. So I'm going to step up. And if you can't do it with this step, you can do it 2 steps after. So I'm going to go through the next hex bead and the next 11-0 to step up. All right, so we're going to do that again. It looks a little wonky because it's the first couple of rows. So we're going to grab 3, pick up a hex bead, 2 11-ohs. I'm exiting right here, skipping the hex bead, going through the next 11-oh. Pick up a hex bead and 2 11-ohs, exiting here, skipping the hex, going through the next 11-oh. If your tail thread gets in the way, just pull that out of the way. Now this is our third hex bead to complete this row, and I'm picking up 2 11-ohs. Exiting here, skipping the hex bead, going through the next 11-oh, and I'm going to step up to go through the hex bead and the 11-oh. And that completes your row. So you might notice a little bit of the spiral starting here. So we're going to do that a few more times. I've got my 3 for my next row, my 2 11-ohs, exiting this 11-oh, skipping the next hex bead in line, going into the 11-oh right after. That's my first bead for the row. Picking up my second hex bead with 2 11-ohs, exiting here, skipping the hex, going through the next 11-oh after that. And you're holding this either between your fingers or on a rod that you can hold on to. Picking up my last third hex bead with 2 11-ohs. I'm exiting here, skipping the hex bead, going through the next 11-oh to complete the row, and stepping up through the hex bead and 11-oh after. And we'll do that one more time. Pick up a hex bead, 2 11-ohs, exiting here, skipping the hex next in line, going into the 11-oh directly after that. Pick up a hex bead, 2 11-ohs, skipping the next hex in line, following the 11-oh directly after. Pick up your last hex bead for the row and 2 11-ohs, going through, skipping this hex bead, going through the 11-oh after, and then stepping up through the hex bead and the next 11-oh in line. Let's get this tail thread out of the way. Pull that together, and that completes your row. And as you can see, the spiral is starting. So that is the pattern for the Russian spiral using a hex bead. And like I said, you can substitute. If you don't have hex beads, you can try it with a 4mm or 6mm and do the same pattern. You can do multiple colors and so forth. So you're just going to repeat that pattern of picking up a hex and 2 11-ohs, and you can rewind the video to continue. So that is how you complete that particular pattern. So here's where I have done so far. I've got this length at about 19.5 inches. Isn't that gorgeous? So from here, we're going to close off one end, and I'll show you how to do that, and then I'll do the other end off camera. You basically are just going to add some 11-ohs. Once you've completed your third, add your third hex bead for the row and you've stepped up, you should be coming out of an 11/0 after a hex bead. So from here I'm going to pick up 2 11/0s in silver. I'm exiting right here. I'm going to skip the hex bead and go through the next 11/0 after the hex bead. So I'm adding 2 11/0s in silver instead of a hex bead. Pull that together. I'm going to pick up 2 more 11/0s, exiting here, skipping this hex bead, going through the next 11/0, pull that through, and you can rotate this as you're doing this. Now I'm going to pick up 2 11/0s, exiting here, going through this next hex bead to complete the row. Just like that. Now I'm going to step up. I'm going to go through the next 2 11/0s right here. Actually, I'm going to go through the next 3. The next 3 11/0s. Now I'm going to pick up 1 11/0, exiting here. I'm going to skip these next 2 and go through the next 11/0 in line. Just going to have 1 11/0. Now I'm going to pick up another 11/0, skip the next 2 in line, and go through the next 11/0. And I want that to come at the top. Pick up another 11/0, exiting here, skipping these next 2, going through the next 11/0. Just want to close that up. Now I'm going to bring my needle through the 11/0 in line, the next 2 11/0s in line. I'm going to come through the 11/0 I added. Now I'm going to go through these next 2 11/0s. You're just trying to kind of close up that hole like that. Now I'm going to pick up, I'm going to add one of my wire guardians here. So I'm going to pick up 1 11/0, my wire guardian, now I'm going to come down the other side of my wire guardian and make sure the thread falls in the channel of your wire guardian. Pick up another 11/0, and I'm just going to eyeball this, just kind of center it. I'm coming out here, I'm going to go through this 11/0 directly across through these next 2, or that next one right there. Just like that. Now I'm just going to come back through and around so I can reinforce that. So I'm just going to follow the thread path because I want to go back through where my wire guardian starts. So just pass your needle through the beads like so until you're lined up with where you started. So I'm going to come back up the 11/0 and the wire guardian like that. Come back down through the wire guardian and the 11/0 and the next 2 11/0s if you can squeeze your needle in there. Actually, I'm going through just the one. And make sure the thread falls right in there in that little channel like that. So we're going to come through around and reinforce this a couple of times. Once you've gone through this 3 or 4 times, you can just bring your thread down, follow the spiral, do a couple of half-hitch knots, and you can cut your thread off right there. And then I'll meet you back. All right, I reinforced this about 3 times, came down my wire guardian, and I'm following the thread path of the spiral going this way. So I'm going to do a half-hitch knot right here, coming under a thread bridge like that. Pull your needle until you have a small loop. Bring your needle back through the loop and pull like that. That is a half-hitch knot. So do that a couple more times and then cut your thread off, and I'll show you how to put on the clasp. All right, we're coming near the end here, and this is a tedious project. It's something you can do sitting down watching one of your programs. You can just sit and do, a couple of inches every few hours, because it took quite a few hours to do this particular pattern. So now that I've got that all done, I've already added a jump ring to one end with my wire guardian. So we're just going to add the lobster clasp by opening a small jump ring. Put my lobster clasp on through the wire guardian, and then close your loop. There is your completed necklace. So let me get this all arranged and we'll wrap this video up. All right, there's our beautiful Russian spiral necklace with hex beads. And the nice thing about the hex beads is it really bounces off the light. Isn't that beautiful? That denim blue with the pops of galvanized silver, just gorgeous. So this concludes today's tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you for joining me today. I'll have links in the description box below with all the products used in today's tutorial, including a link to my website. If you're not a subscriber, I hope you do subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're notified when I upload new videos. And please leave me a comment. I'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you to all of you that have subscribed and continue to watch and like and share my link. I really do appreciate your return visits. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Happy beading, and I'll see you next time.